Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about header and footer template parts inside the 2024 theme. We've been looking at 2024 in depth for a while now. This time I want to spend a little bit of focus on that header and footer. We're not going to create like a super customized header and footer, but I wanted to get you comfortable with customizing it because these are two areas, the header and footer, where I was really dumbfounded for a while trying to get it to work. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think it's coming down to the fact that you need a lot of real estate. You need high resolution monitors to work in the site editor, and especially when you're trying to manipulate these sort of fine details of a footer layout or a header layout, because it's still pretty cumbersome and arguably the most challenging area to work inside of WordPress right now is customizing the header and footers because of our user interface. When you have two sidebars open, you really struggle with the landscape or the lack of landscape or real estate that we have when we're customizing these headers and footers. That's actually the most challenging part of all of this stuff. And I'm going to talk about some of that stuff today. So as you get into customizing your header and footers, you understand how to do this stuff. Before we pull up the footer and the header template parts, I just want to wrap a concept around your head because I think it's important, and it's how you're going to be customizing your headers and footers. So through all of my 2024 videos, I've been talking about putting everything into group blocks and then customizing and laying out your patterns with the group mindset first. And that's important because that's how the headers and footers are. So we're going to add a group block here just to show you as an example. And we'll select this one group object next or first, and then we're going to add in a row block. And quite simply on the left-hand side, what we're going to see here is group and row. And this is that nested element methodology that patterns are built from, right? When you're building out patterns, generally you got your groups, you got your columns, you've got your content blocks inside that, paragraphs, headings, images, buttons, and you're putting all of that stuff in a self-contained little container. And if we add something like our site title, our site logo, and then add in another element to this row block, site title, effectively, this is how the header is built. Group, a row, because you're going to have a row of elements, site logo, site title, and then you'd add in your navigation, right? And that's effectively, if we add in a navigation item, and we select a different navigation, let's go primary navigation. Effectively, what I just did is build out the header template part right here inside this page. It's using blocks, and that's one of the wonderful things about header and footer template parts is it's still the block-based experience. So you have that flexibility. You can build this stuff out, and it's fairly straightforward and intuitive. But again, the challenge is going to be how this all incorporates in a very small space. Let's get into looking at our template part. So I'm going to go back to all pages. This is a WordPress.com account, by the way. I'm just experimenting with WordPress.com lately, building out a small little project there. So we're going to go to Appearance Editor. Get this little recording thing out of the way. And one of the important things to know is your header and footer template parts are actually in the patterns, manage all templates parts section. I don't love that either. I've talked about this in other videos. So we go into the footer, and on this screen, on this template parts overview screen, one of the cool things is that WordPress knows that you have a few different navigation items in here, right? So when we look at how this footer is put together, these are actually three different navigation blocks right here under Sitemap, My Other Sites, and My Socials. And the templating system knows, it says, hey, there's three navigation items here. Let's show that in this overview screen so that I, as the end user, can quickly jump into these navigation items and customize the nav items here without having to go into the template. There's definitely some positives and some negatives here, like the fact that if I was like, oh, great, I get to modify my navigation here. And this is part of the areas that I struggled with. I go into the navigation, I start to customize it. Well, number one, it already looks different. It's now in your vertical view instead of the stacked view. So if you're not used to like customizing sites, like why did that just change? That's a weird experience. Okay, not a huge deal. I can go and customize this stuff. And okay, and let me go back to my template part. Oh, I'm in the primary navigation menu now. Oh, let me go back again. Oh, now I'm back to the parent design view of my entire site editor. So now I have to scroll. I have to go back to template parts in my patterns. A little bit of a disjointed experience there. It's just not fun or intuitive. So let's go back to our footer template part, and we'll edit our template footer. So right now on this screen, hey, everything's fine. Here's my footer area. I can customize all this stuff. I made a tiny little adjustment here, which is I added this social icon. When you're working at it in this view, no problem. Again, 14-inch monitor, not a lot of issues when you're looking at it like this. I really like to use the block list view because it allows me to punch in and find the exact block and area I need to be in. And if you look at this column here, the sitemap column, look how deep this is in the tree of the list view. You know, I don't really trust trying to get my mouse in there and trying to click in and get a button. I always use the list view. And again, real estate here, not that bad. But as soon as I now, hey, want to adjust the header, I've clicked the sitemap. Let me pull up the settings panel. Now our footer is much more condensed. And when I was moving menus and text around, I was duplicating blocks, I was trying to like set things up. Man, it was challenging in this space. And I don't have any workarounds for you or any real pro tips other than you kind of have to like grit your teeth and bear this experience until it gets a little bit better. I've always, used that if you're trying to move blocks around in the editor, again, I try to avoid that experience because I do find it very difficult. And that's why I use the list view, because I can grab something, I can move it around with much more precision instead of having to do it in the editor view. That's why I always have list view open. And when I'm got my list view open and I've got my block settings open, you're juggling between trying to see what the stuff is going to look like. All right, I've wasted enough time talking about that, but just know that it's still a semi-painful experience. And when we look at the footer specifically, you could see the reason why I was telling you about groups and columns and rows is because that's how this is all built. You can navigate this area and really highlight the things you want to change. So if you want to get rid of, let's say, the site logo, like I don't actually really need the site logo because I don't have one for this particular project, I can delete it, save the footer part, and now that's going to broadcast that footer change across the entire WordPress website. I'm saying that for users who have never seen this before. And then that site title is left there alone. If we expand the next stack, you can see the site tagline and the site title. So you might ask yourself, why are these blocks called site title and site tagline and site logo? Well, obviously this is what we would consider dynamic data. This is data getting pulled in from the WordPress settings so that when you change it in the WordPress settings, it's changing it across all of the blocks that have site title, site tagline, and site logo indicators. And that's dynamic content for you, right? And that makes your life a little bit easier. Technically, you could delete the site title blocks and type in your own title if you want. Just know that if somebody changes the site title in the settings, it's not going to change your block. You're going to have to go back to your block and change it. So again, just illustrating the power of dynamic content, dynamic blocks, and the block-based building experience. It's not like earth-shattering stuff, but it is inching closer to having a more dynamic building experience. So when you're navigating through and you want to change your navigation items, one of the areas that I really messed up on and what really drove me a little bonkers when I was trying to do this is when I was adding in new navigation items. So when I was adding in new navigation items, I was really struggling with it. And it's because, one, the real estate, but two, I foolishly did this. I foolishly did duplicate, block. Now look what just happened. Number one, as soon as I added an item, this whole display thing just got really out of whack. And I can imagine myself as a brand new user going, what the heck just happened? Did I just break my site? And you're always wrestling with what this layout looks like versus, what it's going to look like in the front end, like the editor versus the front end. So I really struggled with moving elements around just because of this real estate issue. I'm going to delete that. And then I was also duplicating navigation items. And foolishly, that meant that whenever I was editing a duplicated navigation item, it was changing it across all the blocks. You have to add and create a new navigation. I know, like, this is stuff that is like 101, but when you're in the moment in editing, I just wanted to make you aware of that. If you're duplicating blocks, you have to assign a new menu. And how do you do that? What's the other important thing to know when you're editing your headers and your footers? And your 2024 theme in general, always look to this navigation block, this three vertical dots for the more settings, more tools. I don't know what the official name is, because it's going to unlock other things you can do with that particular block that you might not know about. So for example, when I was putting in these navigations, I was like, where do I create a new menu? How do I add a new menu? What if I want to switch the navigation layout or the navigation assignment? This is where you do it. You do it in the three vertical dots, click that, and that'll allow you to either create a new menu or assign a menu item to a particular block. Same thing goes when you're modifying the look and feel, the design of a block. When you come in here, you're like, oh, there's my typography, size, small, appearance, regular. I can set the different font weights. But like I mentioned in my top 10 tips video, always click this because we have a lot more customization features in here that are hidden that you have to unlock every time you go into that block. So we go font family, letter spacing, text decoration, letter case. Now we have a lot more stuff in here, like changing the font. You want to change the font of your headers, your headings blocks, you can do that right here. And always look to expanding these options. I asked about this on Twitter, and there's a development. It's specific to each theme. So each theme, as it's developed, should be writing code to unlock this stuff for the end user. So I don't have to go in and open that. I hope that happens more, because feature themes like a Cadence, GeneratePress, all that stuff is there. You can see it clear as day. And you're not wrestling with that. Where's the options? How do I customize this stuff? So at the end of the day, when you're creating these, when you're working with the footer and header template parts, I always start with the list view, understand where everything is laid out, and understand that these are all separate stacks that you can customize with separate navigation blocks. Okay. And that's understanding that, and understanding the screen real estate size and juggling all that is going to be an issue for now, and I do hope it gets better. I hope that clears up some of the head scratching and hair pulling you might do when you're working with your headers and your footers. Why do template parts exist? Let's just cover that super quick before we close out the video. Well, template parts exist because when you're building more dynamic sites, and especially in the future, so if I go to my template parts, I have this new footer that I created. And you can create a new template part by clicking on Add New Template Part, give it a name. How do you want to assign it? Is this a general template part, or is it specifically for a header and a footer? And the reason for that is, let me go to the command palette, and we'll go Templates. And the reason for that is, let's say I want to edit this template right here. I could pull up the, oh, no, I'm in the page. Let me go back. Let's pull up the front page. I could edit this template here, go to the bottom, and change out this footer by going to Replace Footer, and then picking that new footer that I made as a template part. This allows you to, as we just demonstrated, assign different footers to different templates. You want a different footer for your homepage versus your product page versus your checkout page. You can create multiple footer template parts and assign those to those specific templates. So whenever you're changing them throughout your site, it's all done in a nice scalable one-stop shop fashion. Feature themes, again, like a GeneratePress or a Cadence, have a lot more like conditional logic. You can do a lot more stuff with it. I don't know if core WordPress will ever get there, but I assume we'll start to have a little bit more dynamic content happening. Like if this is the front page, show this footer template. If this is a product page, show this footer template, like real basic stuff. And then our feature themes will go above and beyond like what WordPress core is giving us out of the box. But we can build these different, this is just 2024, these are the different footer sort of layouts that we can inject into our template if we wanted to change that. And again, this is why I think 2024 is great, because you have a lot of options here to play with things and modify that stuff, okay? So that's the reason behind all of this, head scratching and pain that we're going through with header and footer template parts. At least me. I'm curious to know if you're struggling with headers and footer template parts and what kind of questions you might have around that. I know some of you had asked about like customizing it and going deeper. Look, I think if you can wrap your head around how to work with groups, rows, and just blocks in general, that's really what you need to know, because the experience isn't all that different when you're customizing these header footers than you would be like creating a pattern on a page. Again, for example, if we click on this group block and we pull up the block settings, you might say, well, how do I change the background color? Maybe I want the background color of my header to be different. You would click on the group, change the background. Let's go dark. And then if we pull up the row, this should work. I didn't test this, but the row block should override all the white. There it is. So now, because the row block is the top level container, my style settings to change the font color text all to white overrides whatever this row block had, and then everything that trickles down. So if I assign it white up here, that contrasts well to the black background, and then there we go. Now it's much of a different looking header, right? But that's nothing specific to the header template part. That's just Gutenberg block customization in general, which is why, again, I thought it was important to show you the methodology behind that. And again, one of the nice flexibility features of being able to use blocks inside your header and your footer, or at least that's the intent, is to put in, let's say, a button. Again, it's all native WordPress. So if we put in this button, and I brought the button to right after the navigation, this might not work. Again, as I struggle to find the navigation, and we go background, white, text, black, and this should go here, right? There it is. So now, if we close this out, this is a nice little block, like call to action block. So a lot of sites, you'll see this with a lot of sites, will have text-based navigation and then subscribe, right? Or buy now, if you're building out like a WooCommerce store. So that flexibility of blocks inside the header footer parts, it's one of the nice things. I mean, this is nice because that used to be on feature themes to have a little call to action button when you were using the customizer back in the day. Like you had developers were writing out like special code. You had to check something off. You had to fill out a custom field, and then you couldn't really manipulate that button unless they put in a lot of like design options for it. Now it's just, I can make a million buttons with Gutenberg block button, and I can customize it to my, my heart's content. I actually like this. I think I actually might save this. Well, except for the buy now part. I don't have anything to buy on this site. So it was, a little bit of a head scratching experience. Let me know what you think in the comments. This was a long video. I'm sorry. This was a tough one because I really wanted to make sure you understood the concept of blocks first, and then really condense that into how the header and footer template parts are laid out. I'm sure you might have some more questions. Leave them in the comments below. If you want your favorite 5 minutes of WordPress that I publish every week, go to thewpminute.com/subscribe. Thumbs up if you like today's video. Subscribe to the channel. 19 minutes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry it took so long. I'll see you in the next video.